Okay, so we're live in the Sam Jeppe Palace where he's got his books. We're going to be talking about the full moon in Hasta. I don't know why I'm holding my books up, just because I feel like it. We're going to be talking about the full moon in Virgo in Hasta Nakshatra. In this book, there's a whole chapter about Virgo, like 15 pages. Get it. Learn about it. This book, too. Excellent information about all the signs, planets, yoga, Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, sacred astronomy. No, so we have the full moon in Virgo, Hasta Nakshatra. And I wish there was a way to share the screen on this YouTube live, but there isn't. And we got here, pull this chart. Yeah, so we're going to have this full moon. Actually, it'll be early in the morning tomorrow. So we're at the we just started the Purnima Tithi a few hours ago. So going to show you how to look at these full moons and new moons and whatnot. It's based on the portions which are called the Tithis, which are the lunar days. And these lunar days show how show how far the moon separates in its longitude from the sun each day, 12 degrees and 30 minutes. And so you take a nakshatra, which is 13 degrees 20 minutes, and subtract the longitude of the sun, which is 1 degree. And that's how the sun and the moon separate from each other each day. It's pretty cool. So it takes the moon 27 days to go around the earth, 27 to 28 days. That's why we have 27 nakshatras. But then 30 days to make a new moon, 30 days from new moon to new moon. Because each day, the moon moves 13 degrees 20 minutes and the sun moves 1 degree. Next day, the moon moves 13 degrees 20 minutes and the sun moves 1 degree. So it goes like this for 30 days, right? This is why they're not the same, and they're different things. So you want to understand the astronomy is really important. So everybody's talking about their chart, saying good morning. Good morning. I'll look at some of the comments in a bit, but first I just want to talk about these lunar cycles, how they're made, why they're important. And so we have these two calculations. One is what's called a Synodic Cycle, which is from new moon to new moon. And that's the cycle. That was the cycle back in the Vedas. All the way back, that's how they reckon with the soli lunar months. All of the 30-degree portions, that includes 30-degree zodiac signs, 30-degree months, 30-day months, and the sun-moon cycles, which include new moons and full moons, all come from this. So you wonder, why is there 12 months in the year? Why are there 12 zodiac signs? Why 12? Well, this is why there's 12. Because there are 12 synodic cycles of the moon each year. It's very important. And I'm finishing quite an extensive article that is that breaks down the confusion around the zodiacs, which also comes from this. You know, those people who are using the tropical zodiac, whether I agree with it or not, you know, it's certainly not part of Vedic astrology. There's no debate about that. All you need to do is look at all of these texts, and every method and every text uses a sidereal-based zodiac. It's not a debate. Those who go against that is that on some level they don't understand these 30-degree portions and where the 30 even comes from. And again, the 30 comes from these 30-degree portions of the sun moon every year. So what happened back in the ancient times, that includes the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Indians, the Greeks, is the first, what you would even call astrology or zodiac, where it wasn't a zodiac at all. They were calendars. Because first we have to understand the rhythms of nature on Earth. And they were looking to the heavens as well. There was also divination being used. They assigned deities and gods to the planets and whatnot way far back. But the first usage of any timekeeping or any kind of gaze into the heavens was to formalize the calendar so that they knew, the seasons. And they all got it right. They all knew basically the length of the year. They had a relationship with the seasons. They measured them by what's called the heliacal rising of stars. But India really understood way back in the Rig Veda, or at least in the Yajur Veda, that you had 366 days. They had 12 months, 12 portions. They're months. They're not zodiac signs. They had 12 months. They had 12 soli lunar cycles as well, again. And they didn't have the 12 zodiac signs in the sky yet, but they were measuring all of it with the 27 nakshatra-based portions, because the zodiac is for measuring these phenomena. And again, solstices and equinoxes are just one more thing that measuring the thing that's changing with something else that's changing. You're measuring it with something stable. That's what the zodiac is. It's measuring. Now, as it relates to astrology, it's measuring objects moving through the sky from where we're standing. So you don't measure Jupiter going through the sky by our seasons. And see, this is what tropical zodiac is. It's actually the seasons on Earth projected into space. So, and trying to find the exact position of Venus or Jupiter based on our seasons on Earth doesn't make sense, right? In that regard. For Western astrology, because everything in Western astrology is archetypal, they deal in archetypes. Everything is archetypes. The planets are archetypes. Signs are archetypes. Everything's an archetype. So it makes more sense, even just conceptually, that the zodiac is another archetype. It's an archetype of the seasons. This is why Western astrologers, my Western astrology friends, will be like, but the zodiac doesn't even align with the seasons anymore. It's like, right, they're not the same thing. But to them it is, because it's an archetype. Everything in Western is archetypes, but at least it is now. But it's not in Vedic. The sky isn't an archetype. The planets aren't archetypes. They're basically like gods. They're like deities. They're like the forces that make things happen. It's not archetypes. They're actually things that make things happen. So there's a difference in East and West in this regard, just sort of conceptually. But what happened is when, later on, what happened is because they were trying to stabilize the calendar, and especially in the Greek, in Western tradition at that time, basically the Hellenistic Greeks who had conquered India, they had conquered Babylon, or what was called Mesopotamia, and they extracted, and also Egypt in Alexandria, they basically took the knowledge out. It went back into Greece. The 12 sidereal portions of the zodiac went into Greece. Then they started using the sidereal zodiac from Babylon. And then they joined the seasons with the zodiac sky, because they were almost the same place. And they're like, well, let's stabilize the calendar. We have these 12 zodiac signs and these 12 months, and they're not really aligned. They're not really joined. Plus, the months were so unstable. The calendar was unstable, and they were trying to stabilize it. This is what a lot of historians theorize to some extent, and it makes a lot of sense that to stabilize the calendar, the zodiac signs were already very stable. So, and they were basically aligned. So it's easy to join them and say, well, let's just call the calendar the seasons. And this is what basically happened. And it would be better if we had the zodiac signs as the seasons to some extent, in the West especially. But in the East, it doesn't make sense because we already have a nakshatra-based zodiac, and the astrology falls apart if you do it like that. So the basic misunderstanding between a calendar and a zodiac is kind of at the heart of why people are so confused about sidereal and tropical, quote, zodiac. You got to understand that tropical zodiac, again, it works, especially if you want to use it, especially in Western astrology, again, because everything in Western astrology is an archetype, archetypal language. It's not even said to be even something like karma. Many astrologers don't even, quote, believe in reincarnation, the whole concept of karma. Oh, they don't like that. You know, they say the stars do not, compel, they impel, or whatever it is. Anything to avoid saying, no, that planet does something that makes you feel a certain way and do something. That's built into Vedic astrology and all of Vedic teaching. It's based on your karma. That planet is a facet of your consciousness, and when its karmas arise, you do something. It's built in. It's not an archetype. It's not an archetypal relationship. We don't have an archetypal relationship with the universe. It's not an archetypal language. The zodiac is not an archetype. None of it's archetypal in Vedic teaching. It's literal. The planets are basically gods. You don't like to say gods, but they're put in the same classification of beings as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, basically. And they move through, and Lord Vishnu has incarnated, or has come forth. He's an avatar, so he has emanated as the 9 planets to bestow the karmas on us. No archetype there. It's literal. So the sky is literal. The zodiac is literal. Planets are moving through the sky, and if we want to find where they are, we find them by a literal placement, not by projecting an archetype of the seasons into the sky. And it's the seasons of the Northern Hemisphere. It's literally an almanac of the Northern Hemisphere. That's what the tropical zodiac is. That's why it doesn't really work. First of all, it doesn't work in Southern Hemisphere. All the directions of the sun and whatnot don't really work anymore. So I'm explaining this a little bit because it's an important issue, and people are free to do it if they want to do it. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not even saying they're wrong if they do it as a Vedic, to do Vedic astrology that way. If they want to do it, it's certainly not the way it's supposed to be done. It's not in any of the texts, and it breaks up, not even to mention things like the connection between the nakshatras and the Navamsha chart, which the nakshatras are our deeper soul nature. They align perfectly with all the rashis through the Navamsha. The whole system is built on this one integrated zodiac. And this is why we still study Vedic astrology the way it was studied 2,000 years ago, right? And literally, if a person doesn't understand these things, even, they're not really much of a Vedic astrologer if they don't understand the texts. Whereas, again, that's not the way it is in Western astrology. Hardly no Western astrologers have read Ptolemy. They don't know anything about, Vedius Valens or the, Ferdaria and all the ancient Western techniques. They're not even studied anymore. Western astrology, again, it's very archetypal. It's very much this modern kind of archetype of the zodiac being sort of anywhere we want it to be, and making up rulerships and all kinds of stuff, which it works for the system. And it does work because Western astrologers that I know, and I know a lot of them, they look at my chart, they know what they're doing. Within that system, it works fine. But Vedic astrology, now you bring all of that in and you're using an archetypal zodiac rather than a literal zodiac. It's very different. So, these cycles are very important. These sun-moon cycles are the basis of not just zodiacs, but of the calendar. 365 and a quarter day year, broken up into 12 portions. And what they did back in the Indian times is they based it on the full moons because we could see the full moon. So this is why the months, even now in India, as they were back in the Yajurveda, it's still the same months. You have Chaitra, which is the likely Nakshatra of Chitra in that solar month, right? You have Magha, which is the month of, because it's likely that the full moon will be in the Nakshatra of Magha that month, for example. So everything, and that's the way it was done, 3,000 years ago. They still do it this way. So it's very important to understand the issues and the themes behind why we would calculate something a certain way. And when we have these new and full moons, these lunation cycles, it's important to really understand why, what we're in the middle of and why these are the authentic cycles. The real month starts on the new moon. That's when the real month starts. It's still the way it is in India. They still do it that way. And again, it's not based on even solstices and equinoxes. They're the things that align the seasons with the year. But the month but the year would actually start, and the months start and are connected with the lunation cycles, because that's when a cycle starts between sun, moon, and earth. That's when our energy begins. We start halfway in that cycle, and we're harmonizing the energy between Pisces and Virgo, because sun and moon come together, which means consciousness, which is the sun, and mind, which is the moon. They come together in Pisces, and then the mind separates. The mind separates from the sun, and then eventually it's exactly opposite, and then we're pulled in that opposite direction. So you can see how this full moon in Virgo, in Hasta Nakshatra, look at how Virgo this update is. It's very Virgo. I wasn't planning on saying this, but I started and I'm like, all of these details now, I want to bring them down and explain them very practically, right? But it's a very Pisces thing I'm talking about, a very cosmic thing. So you can even see in this discussion, it's a very Pisces Virgo conversation, because we're still in the Pisces month. And again, this is another thing that gets really lost in these cycles. We focus on the full moon, but the full moon is the halfway point of the cycle. The cycle is related to the sun. We're in a Pisces cycle, but it needs to be grounded in Virgo, right? And again, those who use, of course, Western astrology is saying it's Aries Libra, which fine, it works for them. But Vedic astrologers who say it's Hasta Nakshatra, and then Libra, again, Hasta is in Libra in that system. That's not how the zodiac is made sidereally, and that's not how all the texts describe the application and the usage of Vedic astrology. That's not how you do it. So we can even see in this sense, Hasta is the practical details and how something works. Virgo, the practical details of how something works, and hopefully it's how the bigger picture works. We need to organize the Pisces structure, because Pisces is literally our relationship with the cosmos, our cosmic oneness, the part of us that's not of this earth, the part of us that understands the bigger picture and wants to just relax and dissolve into that cosmic unity, which is our true nature. But it's easy to just want to float away and ignore the fact that we've incarnated with karma. So opposite Pisces is Virgo. It grounds that cosmic unity with the practical details of this world. but it's not the practical details of Capricorn or Taurus. It's the practical details of Virgo, which is still flexible. It's still mutable. It's dual. It's bringing in a lot of things and organizing and arranging that structure in a way that's sensible so that I take all the little steps, all the necessary steps that helps me manage every detail and routine so that I can then relax into that cosmic oneness. Now, Virgo is also a sign that's a little worried. It's called a tamasic sign. Now, the tamasic signs, tamas doesn't mean it's bad. It's not a bad thing, although in yoga and in other ways it can be worried. That's the problem with tamas, but it's also very vigilant to problems that could arise. And we need to take care of all these problems. Since the new moon in Pisces a couple weeks ago, we're aware of the bigger picture. We sense our powerlessness about it. Like, well, there's nothing I could do anyway. It's like, I don't know, maybe I'll just sit here and watch TV. Maybe I'll just, I don't know. You know, what I wind up doing, what I've been doing a lot is I kind of fade out a little bit from being so public, and I work on things in a healthy way that are creative. Like I say, I've been working on writing some stuff, but it's big stuff. It's big conceptual stuff. And sometimes I kind of retreat back into the music of my past. You know, I was a musician for a long time, so I kind of go back into the music of the past. I just had this, my Rush. I was a big Rush fan, big rock and roll fan. This just came. I ordered it online. It's got some pictures of my favorite rock band from a long time ago, so I can go back and look. I can go back and look and revisit the simpler days, right? And that's a sort of Pisces thing too, just kind of, you know, escape, right? And escape into something that's I remember back when it was so, you know, life was so innocent, because we want to kind of escape from all the problems of the world. And again, the tamasic signs like Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Aquarius make us aware of all the problems and the things we can't control. And Pisces is where we want to just escape from it. Then we can escape into things that are much less healthy than, you know, revisiting the music of your youth, and that we can escape into drugs and alcohol, or just like watching a lot of mindless TV, or just kind of make ourselves unconscious. But in a healthy way, we escape into something, you know, we escape into the God consciousness. We escape back to ourself. We escape from the fantasy of the illusion and escape our true nature. So the best thing we do in Pisces energy is reconnect with the true self. In order to do that, we need to face the truth. And that's what Virgo is. That's what the tamas is. Look, face the truth. Just face it, and then organize and understand it intellectually. Because again, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. It's intelligence. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, which is the bigger picture. These planets that are opposite each other in many ways contain the same sort of seed principle. So what happens with all full moons is we're trying to harmonize an opposition. And so the harmonizing quality of the Pisces Virgo opposition is harmonizing that sense of cosmic unity, but also a sense of powerlessness of what we do in this world. Powerlessness because of our attachment to the ego, because the ego is powerless, but the soul is all powerful. But how do I connect with that? We can connect with it in some escapist quality, or we can connect with it through methodology and organizing the details, understanding things correctly, and then doing things like yoga, which is and eating the right foods and organizing every little detail, not because we're terrified and we're anal and we're worried to death, which is the problem of Virgo, but because since we've passed through that awareness of our higher self in Pisces, as the moon gets around to Virgo, now we're bringing in that awareness of the higher self, and we're bringing that into our detailed mind, into the detailed structure. Because where you've just passed for the last couple weeks has led you now to this awareness of all the details. Because you're probably getting like, okay, I'm just kind of spinning my wheels a little bit. I'm kind of checked out a little bit. Maybe you felt that. And the last couple days, especially like yesterday and then tomorrow and the next day, you're like, okay, I got to get busy. Okay, I got to get back on what I'm doing. I got to get here and face this stuff. I got to get back on track. I've been doing that too. And I'm just getting back on track a little bit. I kind of let myself, I had some big classes to teach last week, and I'm reorganizing a lot of things in my work, especially with my courses. And just last night, I was like, okay. And I just mapped out like everything that I'm going to be doing, but now I got to start doing it, putting it into practice. Especially because we also have a debilitated Mercury up there in Pisces right now, which has been even more like, let me just kind of go back and revisit all this and all that. So this is what we're starting to feel. And as the full moon gets closer each month, we start to feel the pressure of whatever that opposite thing is start to grind into us and go, okay, come on. We start to feel the pressure and the stress of the full moon. Because it's like a culminating point. The full moon is a culminating point between where the sun, between where the sun is and what had just been a new moon cycle. Let's say this is Pisces. Then the full moon comes around, and like right about here, which was a couple days ago, it starts to get more pressure, and we start to become aware of this polarity even more. Too much of that Pisces, and then around here, as the moon gets in Leo, then it gets closer. We start like, okay. And again, this is also how you can understand things like the 6-8 house relationship. Because the house that's sick, or the sign that's the sixth from another, doesn't have a lot in common with it. When the moon was just going through when the moon was just going through Leo, it's very different than Pisces. Pisces is a fixed water sign. Leo is a fire sign, a fixed fire, right? So this mutable water and this fixed fire don't really have a lot in common. So we feel that stress starting to build up. And then on the full moon, we have the contrast. And just like you can't really bring something to completion until you feel its contrast and you integrate its opposite, that's the way to understand full moon cycles, especially because we're still working on the Pisces principle. It into the thing, just like everything works that way. This is why oppositions create tension, but also integration, because we have to. Just like with a romantic partner or something, we don't really clarify our own gender and identity until we got to look the other in the face and say, how much do I know myself? How much integrity do I have around my gender? I don't know until I got to deal with a woman, or a woman until you have to deal with a man. You don't know how well you're doing your feminine energy. You don't know how well you're doing your masculine if you're a man until you need to show up for it. So this is really the way to look at full moon cycles anyway, is they're the halfway point. And then after the full moon, with this full moon in Virgo, then the moon starts to wane. Then those qualities of Virgo start to be integrated and absorbed into the Pisces principle. And then as we get nearest the new moon, the next new moon, which will be in Aries, those qualities of Pisces wane and wane and wane and wane. And then again, the last sign before the next new moon is the previous new moon cycle. So before the next new moon in Aries, those last days are going to be the moon in Pisces, where we're finally emptied of that, where we've learned that lesson and now we've let it go. We've let go of the Pisces cycle because the last qualities of the last waning moon, the one that's coming up in a couple of weeks, is going to be Pisces, where it started there, now it's ending there. Now we're ready for the next new moon in Aries. Bam, now we're ready for this. Now this cycle comes and it starts over again around Aries, Libra. So this is why you have 12. This is why you have 12 months, because there are 12 of these each year, one revolution of the Earth around the sun, and you have 12 lunation cycles, 12 of these spiritual cosmic cycles that happen based on sidereal signs, at least in Vedic astrology and Indian astrology. That's why there was also 12 months. This is why when they were making the calendar, they also knew this. This is why you have 12 months and 12 zodiac signs, but they're different things. The months are simply measuring months. And when I say months, I mean January, February, March, April. I need to be clear because they're so mixed up. Those months are totally, at least the way we reckon them now, are totally calendar based. They have nothing to do with the sky, nothing to do with sun, moon, nothing to do with objects circling the Earth. We don't measure Jupiter going around the Earth by saying Jupiter is in January. No, we say Jupiter is in, Capricorn. Or we don't say that, like in the sky right now, Jupiter's in Libra. We don't say Jupiter is in October. But that's kind of like what you're saying with tropical zodiac. Because the sun is there in October, we say that that's the zodiac. Oh, well, it's October. Or November, actually, because it would be Scorpio. No, we say it's Libra because that's a portion of the sky, not our calendar from the northern hemisphere projected into the sky. So that's why there are 12. This is why even way back then, even with the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar, they had 12 portions because there was 12, because they knew there were 12 full moon cycles. So again, when you go back into the Indian calendar, they had the portions separated from the zodiac. All of it was correct. And they started the months. They started the calendar months first on the solstice, winter solstice. That started the year, and they had 12 calendar months. Tapa, Tapasya. And the seasons were aligned with the solstices. But the year itself and the months in the civil calendar were based on sun-moon cycles, as they are now. In India, the celebrations aren't based on calendar dates; they're based on lunar cycles. You don't have, the Navratri festival on a calendar date. It's on the new moon that begins that month. Everything is still based on the solar lunar calendar because those are the true cycles. So again, you can't say that you honor that system that honors that and then throw it overboard for some reason. I don't even know what the reason is why they do it in Vedic astrology, because there is no basis for it, not in text or anything else. It's just some people that look back and saw a couple statements in a few texts and say, oh, we should do this. So again, now we have the Nakshatra. It's in Virgo Rashi, but it's in the Nakshatra of Hasta. And again, the Nakshatras are totally aligned with the Rashis. First 3 padas, Nakshatra padas of Virgo are are Uttara Falguni, which are ruled by the god Aryamana. And it shows where the qualities of Leo become organized. That kingdom in Leo becomes organized in Virgo. And so we have that Nakshatra today of Uttar Ashana. And the god Aryaman of organizing and creating contracts and stabilizing all of that. Like if you're going to organize a kingdom, you need to work with people and organize things and manage them with contracts and all of these things. And then the full moon is going to be in Hasta, which literally means hand, and it's taking all of that abstract energy, which you might say power or whatever, and organizing it and making it tangible. Again, it's clearly Virgo. It's clearly not Libra. Okay. And again, those people using tropical zodiac, it's Libra. Hasta, the hand, taking something and making it tangible in your hand. Total earth. Hands in the earth. The hands, the practical, the structure, the form of something. As I take a little drink, this is very Hasta. You grab something with your hand. Again, Libra is an air sign related to ideas. You don't grab ideas with your hand. You don't grab the air. You grab something of the earth with your hand and you drink it. Right? So it's very hands-on. And it's the skilled hands. It's the hands that organizes things, skillfully. And again, you can contrast that with Pisces, which is water. Try hold water in your hands. Again, you can see why there's that stress between Virgo and Pisces, which, by the way, I love drinking water from my hands. And that's what we used to do. So it can be done, but you can't hold it. You have to do something with it, right? So Hasta is where we take this, a part of this earth and move things around. And again, hands, look at hands. They're very, very Mercury-like, right? Very moving. This is why we've been able to evolve intelligence, because we have fingers, opposable thumbs and all this, right? So it's very much about the skills required to organize and manage our life on earth. The great mantra Gayatri is important. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Na Prachodayad. To Savitur, which brings that fire of the sun down into the material realm. It's the great manifestation mantra. So we manifest a life of this. These are important principles for how you can integrate the Pisces energy. All right. So again, for the last couple of weeks, we've had that Pisces kind of maybe sort of checking out a little bit, looking at what's going on, but not being so, just kind of, a sense of apathy, like, well, it's nothing I can do anyway. So I don't know. I'll just go back and, listen to the music of my youth and remember the glory days when I was still not very happy, but at least there were some things that were happy. No, but see, I think one of the reasons we do that is because when we feel a bit out of control with present circumstances and uneasy about the future, the reason a lot of people live in the past is because it's already locked up in a nice, neat little package. You can already remember it the way you want. Nothing's going to change it. Like when I go back and listen to some of the music, from some of those bands that I grew up or, listening to, it's like there are moments of my consciousness and mind and heart that are somewhat frozen in time in a good way. It's not always a good way, but at least it's like a refuge of something innocent or something pure, or just a feeling that is, that's not scary about the future or something, like if that's what's going on. It's not powerless. Like when we do these kinds of things, it's a way to assert power and control. Because if we connect with what's present, especially if we're uncertain about the future, again, because we live in time, the future is always uncertain. The present is certain in that it happened already and it's locked down. So you'll see that people who are afraid, they don't live in the future or even in the present. They live in the past. And many times, if there's a lot of bitterness, they revisit the mistakes of the past, especially like that others sort of perpetrated on them, that sort of bitterness where they reflect and they want to get revenge or they feel bad about it. Even though I had a difficult childhood, as many of us did, when I think about it now, I don't really remember the feeling so much of the difficulty. I remember the beauty of it, even though at the time it didn't feel like that at all. Some of it did. But when I go back and listen to the music and the things that brought joy, it's very easy to reconnect with that innocent wonder again, right? And so that's sort of what we would call nostalgia. This is what nostalgia does. But we can live in the past because we're kind of avoiding the present or the future. So it's okay to do that once in a while because we connect with something very real. And so we're in that Pisces cycle, and we've been in it for a couple weeks. But the Virgo, brings it down to sort of land it in something that is, where we also feel empowered in the present and in the future, moving forward. So we're never going to control the present or the future. And again, that's the big problem with life in general, is we try to control things rather than understand them. So I'm looking at some comments here. I see Tammy Davenport. Reason she moved to Vedic tropical doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think especially when you actually understand the way the zodiacs are made. That's why I sort of explained it here. I don't mean anything personal against people that use this, but I have to be honest at this point. I'm less worried about offending people that, especially Vedic astrologers who've just turned their back on science, frankly, and just like, oh no, I'm going to do this because this person told me that, and cherry pick a few lines out of a few texts and then get out and say, well, that's my system. All right. But it's not even just that it's not the science, but when you look at it even logically, again, why are we taking the solar almanac of the northern hemisphere, projecting that into space to find the exact location of an object going around the Earth? Again, you can see why it makes sense for Western astrology, because everything in Western astrology is archetypal, including the zodiac. It's an archetype. All the planets are archetypes. The zodiac is archetypal. So again, when Western astrologers say, but the zodiac doesn't even line up with the seasons anymore, I say, right. And it never did. It never was supposed to. And that's not what a zodiac is. At least not from Vedic astrology. It's the precise location of objects in the sky. There was no such thing as tropical zodiac until this guy Ptolemy proposed it in the 2nd century. And then it wasn't even used until the Arabs used it, maybe in the 7th century. So again, if that's what people want to do, that's fine. Again, when it comes to Vedic astrology, though, it makes even less sense. And again, you see it showing up in different texts. I understand why someone might think that, particularly if they don't read the text with much discrimination. But at a certain point, the zodiac and assigning those zodiac signs just became a shorthand for seasons and signs. And they just, especially in texts that were non-astrological. Now, you do see it in the Surya Siddhanta. That's the most authoritative text where you see it. But it's hard to tell because it was the last lines in that text. Plus, in all the astrological texts and in every text that shows us how to practice astrology, the zodiac is always sidereal. And again, there's no reason why it wouldn't be. They always used a sidereal zodiac, and they used it correctly. There were no errors back in the time of the Vedas. The errors came from even what's called Hellenistic astrology, which is where the tropical came from in the Greeks. Ptolemy was a Roman citizen who was born in Greece and lived in Egypt, right? So it was all about conquest, and they pulled technology from other cultures and then tried to fix it or figure it out in a different way. That whole culture and all of their mystical knowledge of Alexandria was burned to the ground. We don't even know how much they knew because it was all lost. My speculation is there are probably 100 texts that put all of this stuff I'm saying now into context. For some reason, we studied Tetrabiblos because it was translated into Arabic and whatnot. So then the Arabic astrologers started practicing tropical zodiac. That's when it really caught on. But at the time of the Greeks and the Greek tradition and the actual Hellenistic, they really weren't even practicing tropical zodiac then. And so why, again, if you want to look at it logically, and again, Westerners who want to use it for Western astrology, that's fine. But why are they favoring the culture that was destroyed? and most of the knowledge destroyed over the culture, where we can go back into the Vedas and see exactly the unbroken lineage to the wise Indians. Now, of course, there's big pockets where we don't have exact text, especially about zodiacs when they arrived, when we started seeing them in Indian culture, but we can see the knowledge base that they had, and it wasn't all destroyed and plundered. Much was lost, but it's not like the whole tradition of Alexandria, which was their wisdom centers, were completely destroyed, for example. And so, again, I can see why both work, but I especially see how they both work in their culture or in their system, because Western astrology, at least as it's practiced now, was based on that system. It is now based on this way of looking at the sky. And Indian astrology and the techniques and methods are literally based on looking at the sky that way. I mean, underneath it all, astrology is a series of practices and techniques. What are the techniques based on? The techniques are not based on a tropical zodiac in on Vedic astrology. So that's not even a debate. Every text says it. And in fact, even those who propose to use it don't say it. Even they're like, yeah, they did it all this time, but they were wrong. I guess that's the basis, which again, just doesn't really add up. And we can see it when we get in situations like this with the nakshatras and whatnot, that the basis of the zodiac is Hasta in Virgo. It's very Virgo, Pisces, energetic now. And again, if there are people who look at it and that makes sense to them, that's fine. But is that what they're looking at? Are they really evaluating it sensibly? Because again, when I hear people explain the zodiacs to justify, well, here's why I use tropical, it's like, but that doesn't make any sense. If you got a sensible reason, okay. But if it's a lot of things that then don't add up, they're not in the text, they don't make sense logically, they don't show an understanding of the calendar and what the zodiac is and why are you doing that, then you got to say, well, I don't know why you're doing it. Just because somebody said it? Okay. I guess. So that's what really compelled a lot of people to at least look at the zodiac this way. And by the way, there are many more sidereal Western astrologers. Big sidereal Western astrology tradition, because again, they went back and looked. It's really not that complicated. You can see when it happened. There was no such thing as anyone even thought of, let's join the seasons on Earth with the zodiac. Let's make this calculation that one, because that's literally what tropical is. They went back and said, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Why are we finding the location of Venus based on the seasons? Again, that's like saying Venus is in October. I mean, it's literally like saying that. That's literally what it is, because you're basing it on where the sun would have been at that time. And the reason it's confusing, by the way, and this is what the article is I'm working on, is because of the sun, because we're measuring the sun two different ways. First, we measure it with a calendar because we're circling it, but then the sun is one more object that's circling us. So why are we measuring things that are circling us based on the thing we're circling, which is the conundrum of the tropical zodiac? Why are we doing that? Again, if you think that's a good idea, then do it. But that's actually what it is. Why are we finding Jupiter based on the fact that we're circling the sun, and that's the thing we're circling? Especially when they're not the same thing, when one is drifting away from the other. Again, seasons and zodiacs aren't aligned, right? They never were. They never will be. And they're different calculations. And it's not really clear. In fact, I'll just say this. It's clear that the Greeks actually didn't know that for a long time. The Indians did, because we can look in the Yajurveda, and they did it correctly. They had a sidereal zodiac measuring all of this stuff that was not sidereal. So when the zodiac signs arrived, why would they do tropical? That was never anything anyone would do. That's not what the zodiac is. We wouldn't measure objects going around the Earth based on the calculation of us going around the sun. So when you think about it that way, it's just sensible. And again, like I say, it's sensible too if people think that's sensible. Certainly with Western astrology tradition, all of their techniques are based on those things. especially now. Modern Western astrology is really based on that, and they have a lot of things that are, I'm not saying it compensates, but for example, in Western astrology, everything aspects everything else. So the system is really based on a lot of things like inter aspects, like everything trines everything else, and you look at the exact degrees of each trines. This is really what brings the accuracy in Western astrology. They have things like progressions, and yes, they progress into other signs, but so much of the accuracy and precision, especially in modern Western astrology, happens to do with these exact orbs, things that aren't even actually zodiac specific. Now, of course, they talk about the zodiac all the time, psychologically and whatnot, but I mean the precision and like, oh, you have Sun square Pluto. That means da. And they're not really even interpreting the sign. They're interpreting this thing. You don't hear that in Vedic astrology, because Vedic is based on another architecture. It's based on another precise architecture. So again, it's all of it can work, but you got to know why you're doing it, know why you're saying it. And so I'm sorry, where was that? I'm going to go up a lot of comments here. Yeah, Loris Aquila is reading my book right now. Way to go, buddy. Would karma has something to do with DNA? Well, karma created everything, including DNA. It's not outside of it. It's all the same. We tend to think that there's something outside of karma. Karma is what created everything on this plane. It's what created everything. And K2 moon, so this would be for me 12 cosmic cycles, 12 months. Lisa Wire's been gardening. Way to go, Lisa. Good thing to be doing right now is getting the hands in the soil, right? Because that helps to really ground all that Pisces energy, which is that kind of watery. I do other things to ground, but yeah, absolutely. I've been cleaning my apartment, right? So Virgo, the sign of healing. All the signs are different kinds of healing, but Virgo is self-healing. So Vidya M said, some call Virgo the sign of healing. It's often self-healing because, like, if someone has a Virgo or planets in Virgo, because the constitution is inherently a little bit weak in Virgo. So what do you mean? Why aren't my books available on Amazon? Of course they are. Way too expensive to ship to Europe. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can get them on my website, but they still have to ship there, and shipping is shipping is expensive. So please don't yell at me because I can't make Amazon shipping less expensive. You can buy the ebooks, or you can buy the Kindle version, and it's definitely worth it, because then you can also use it as like a and search it. So if you don't want to pay the shipping, I would recommend getting the Kindle version. And so looking at the comments, and I appreciate reading them, and great. So I'm going to leave it at that, and thank everyone for coming, and we'll take it from there. And I hope you have a good